everyone. Welcome to the monthly pause. Always love the weather report and where everyone is zooming in from um, all over the world as usual. And so excited to have Diana Whitney zooming in, not from very far away from me here in Vermont. And she lives in Brattleboro, but her poems reach wide and far. And we're here to talk about, in part at least, her new book, Dark Beds, which is newishly out from June Road Press. Diana is also the editor of an anthology of poetry for girls becoming themselves called You Don't Have to Be Everything, which I highly recommend for yourself or any of the young people in your life, girl, guy, everything in between. So welcome, Diana. So excited to have you here.
Thank you, James. I'm so happy to be here. It feels really fitting to be here on Valentine's Day and kind of bringing maybe not the commercial aspects, but talking about things that really matter, and just matters of the heart as they manifest in through poetry.
Yeah, yeah, it's so important. And I love that you're pointing out this is sort of a non-commercial space where we can talk about like real love and affection and not, my husband Brad just went to the grocery store and he said, I felt like I was assaulted by like the flowers and the heart-shaped boxes and just we realize that we're sort of protected from that because we're not in a grocery store, big box store very often, but that commercial aspect is just out there and it seems like there's so much pressure to be in love and to love a certain way, and I think that's why I appreciate your poem so much, that you're taking, I don't want to call it a rough love. It's not tough love, but it's almost like it is real love. It's like,
Yeah.
looking at, love between a mother and daughter, love between a man and wife, love between um, just so many different relationships in this book alone, but I think in all your poetry.
Oh, thank you. I will actually say I did also stop by a big grocery store today and I felt the assault.
Yeah.
I was just trying to get some raspberries because it's actually my husband's birthday today, so we have um, a double holiday. And
Mhm.
yeah, the blast of consumerism was kind of destabilizing. So then to get to come back here and think about poetry and that kind of dropping down into the deeper place. And I mean, the book, it's interesting, like the cover is kind of reddish and earthy colored, the way that maybe it's like a Valentine's Day colorscape, but it took a long time to come into the world, I think, as you know, and that's okay. Enduring the time that I was working on the poems and revising them and then putting them away, again, waiting for them to find a home, the relationships I was writing about shifted as they do, so writing about my mom and her journey with Alzheimer's. At the beginning of the book, it's in a different place than it is at the end. And same with writing about my marriage, as I do pretty openly, like wrestling with some hard things. And yet, people are asking like, well, how does it end? It's like, well, you just need to look at the dedication. The book is dedicated to Timothy, whose birthday is today, and who it's been almost 20 years that we've been married. And as anyone out there maybe in the community today knows, like it's a challenging journey. It's not for the faint of heart. And I guess I believe in sort of being able to name that, but also like honor the difficulty and that like that forging through strength. Um,
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I love that you say it's not for the faint of heart. It's like kind of a different use of heart on
Art.
Valentine's Day. So is there a poem that comes to mind that you would like to share to kind of bring us into the soul space of poetry?
Yeah, I actually thought about starting with the kindergarten studies, the human heart poem, because there's hearts in it, and literal hearts that you would draw, and then the actual, organ, the muscle of the heart. So, should I just go ahead?
Yeah, dive
Yeah.
right in.
Okay. Kindergarten studies the human heart. Nothing like a Valentine. Pink construction paper glue sticked to doilies downstairs in preschool. The sand table filled with flour. The fours driving trucks through silky powder. White clouds rising to dust their round cheeks. Up here, the fives are all business. 4 chambers on the chalkboard. 4 rooms colored hard in thick tipped marker. Red and red, blue and blue, oxygen rich and oxygen poor. The branching vine of the aorta hanging its muscled fruit. Carmine blood flower blooming in a dark jungle. My girl squeezes her fist to show me the size of it, pulses it like a live animal, taps the double rhythm that never stops. Not a trot, but the echo of a trot. Not a drum, but the echo of a drum. Small palms on the art table, laying down the backbeat. Become, become, become.
Mm, love that poem so much. Mm.
Thank
Yeah, I have never noticed that the sort of contrast between the 4-year-olds and the 5-year-olds who are, they've been given this task, they're all business. And it's sort of, I guess, because we're on Valentine's Day and we're talking about that commercial aspect, which Lisa Brieger said Americans spent $25.9 billion on this day last year. And I'm just imagining where that could go. That might be a little better than, heart-shaped boxes. But just that kind of introduction into, what love is and, how we represent love in popular culture and maybe an awareness of romantic love even.
you.
That's when it begins. And I'm sort of like thinking of those 4-year-olds driving their trucks through the powdery flour, like, boy, wasn't that the life, before.
I notice someone's asking the fours and the fives. Yes, those are the ages of the classrooms. And actually, this poem was based on my younger daughter's experience in a tiny little kindergarten preschool where we went upstairs once you were the kindergarten and you had
Yeah.
you had to be 5. And believe me that when you're grown up you don't think 4 or 5 it's all the same, but at that age it's so distinctive. And yeah, that innocence of it used to be a sand table, and I remember when the teachers put flour in it, and just the joy of children just letting like the mess all over themselves and all over the room. And and then actually I hadn't realized that the size of a heart is anatomically about the size of your fist.
Hmm.
Um, so to watch a little 5-year-old, learn that fact and then show. And then I guess for me, this poem, I mean, just to take a turn maybe towards darkness a little bit, the poem actually has more like a deeper occurrence because my dad died of a heart attack. And so as I'm watching my 5-year-old study this, absolutely magnificent organ and like draw and color it and, listen to it and the sound it makes. I'm also thinking of, what happens when we don't know that like a heart is not well. So there's a poignancy there for me. And just what it means, children just give us such a sense of like of hope and possibility, even in like a time of grief.
Yeah. I love that. And I think that's why the images are so vivid in this. I mean, I was just really paying attention to the sounds as you were reading it. I forget the line, but it's something like, carmine fruit in a dark jungle, something like that. And I was like, oh, like that's transporting me to a totally different place in this classroom and then bringing me back very quickly, which I think is such a masterful move in the poem. But that image of the fist, it's like in the case of your daughter here, it's sort of this empowerment, this awareness, this knowledge, this kind of literal like knocking against the table, like this is who I am, this is what's making me and keeping me
Mhm.
alive. But then I'm thinking, I wasn't aware that your dad passed from a heart attack. And so that is a different context that, the heart can be too clenched, like a fist. And a fist is a mark of empowerment, but it's also, it can be a hard thing too.
Right.
Right.
And I think that's one of the mysteries of poetry is this poem probably just came out
Mhm.
with those images.
Yeah.
And then as I was, going into my own process of trusting the language, trusting the sounds, trusting the music, then I started to feel the presence of my father and the sort
Mhm.
of um grief around the heart, as as you just talked about what happens with maybe a heart is too clenched.
Mhm.
um but it was not in any conscious way. I mean, I think that's what I love so much about poetry, both reading it and writing it, is that it's beyond the pure intellect and you know um factoids say about the heart or cardiology.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, just that one fact of, it's being the
Yeah.
size of the fist is really so much of what we need to really give that resonance. And I was thinking too, like I am often saying in this space, because I've found it to be true in my own work that, so many things just happen accidentally. And so it's about creating or just even fostering. I'm not even sure you can consciously create the space for it. You can just, do your best to kind of say, here you go, here are the materials, and do with me what you will. But it just happens accidentally. And so I think it's a beautiful thing when you're really, it's almost like the mind needs the sound and the music of a poem to really pay deep attention to in the way that you did here, so that you're focused on that and the meaning and those deeper resonances can just kind of take care of themselves, and they can create all these layers that you're going to have after you finish the poem and that a reader is going to bring to it as well.
Oh, I love that. That's
Yeah.
really feels actually very affirming around my own process around not maybe overthinking the creative process and kind of trusting, being able to follow language, follow sound. I think one of the delights of this poem when I got to the ending was, and this I'm gonna just nerd out a little bit, be a
Please.
little bit of a poetry geek, but when I realized that word become, when you repeat it, is actually the rhythm of like an I am. So
Mhm.
it's become, and we know it more in like, the Shakespearean iambic pentameter, and mine wasn't pentameter, but that was very satisfying that it's like the heartbeat. Um, it's
Mhm.
unstressed followed by a stressed syllable. That is actually what the rhythm of our heart makes. So
Mhm.
I think that was also not something that I came to the poem with, but as I was writing that word, which was the word for the kindergartner, discovering herself and, like you said, like feeling the power with the new knowledge and the fist, then it was just serendipitous how it fit in with one of like the foremost rhythms, I think, of poetry in English.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it couldn't have been, I think, to my mind, a more perfect ending. And it has that rhythm, but there's also something that I can't even quite put my finger on about the sound of become. Like it's a form of B, so it's not like the strongest verb in the world per se.
Mm.
But then when it's repeated like this and in the larger context that the poem has created, it's everything. It just kind of brings the poem to this fuller point, so that I think as you're watching your daughter in this moment of becoming, you also are becoming. And I think that's what I was trying to think about with this book in the beginning, because I said, there are all these relationships, mother daughter, and I
Mm.
was thinking of this poem, but then there's, you as a daughter with your mother, and so there's that mirror aspect, I think, that's happening. I mean,
Absolutely.
for anyone who has kids and is a
Right.
kid.
And yeah, you're right. And actually the other poem I was thinking about reading was Word Finding, which also comes in a similar early on in the book, as Kindergarten Studies in the Human Heart does. And it's also in a way a poem of becoming. And I have to say I love the word become, and then becoming as sort of an experience that it's not just for children or for teenagers or for young people, that it's part of being human, and that we're all still in the process of becoming, even if
Mhm.
society doesn't talk like that, all of us being on this human journey.
Mhm.
And I love that you recognize that the mother in the poem is becoming. And I was, it took a lot in terms of my mom's, really heartbreaking. There's that word hard again. Devastating 10-year, I can say journey, but sometimes that just sounds like a little too, I don't know, new agey. Like, yeah, it was a journey, but like it was also a battle,
Right.
with, just a very brutal disease. And yet for me to, as a daughter, let go of what our relationship had been and
Mhm.
really step into the present moment with her, holding her hand, looking her in the eye, and meeting her, in just a space of love and presence. Um, and for me, that was a kind of becoming, that enabled me to like keep showing up for her.
Mhm. No, I think that's beautiful. Absolutely. Yeah, and I love that you use the word presence. I mean, I think that's why we're drawn to poetry, because, and poetry to capture moments like that when you are just sitting with your mom, holding her hand, or, watching her struggle to find a word, that poetry is such a small canvas in a way, but it's also this wider, deeper container that can hold that presence in a way that, I know you write a lot of prose as well, but I sort of feel like prose can touch it, but there's just something about a poem that really holds it more deeply. I still try to make it happen in the prose too, but there is just something about that condensed language and images of poetry that really make that happen. So I would love for you to share that poem if you want
Yeah,
to.
I will say actually the older I get, the more poetry becomes important and the
Mhm.
less, or primary for me.
Yeah.
Um and it's not that there's not still a space for prose, but I savor that compression and how emotion is contained within the world of a poem.
Mm.
So why don't I read Word Finding? Um, and just a little note at the beginning, word finding is a term used, in definitely by the Alzheimer's Association, but for that early stage of dementia, as that being one of the primary symptoms of struggling to find a
Mm.
word. Word finding for my mother. 3 words we must never speak. Do you remember? My question is a stone thrown into the deep waters of our conversation. Anxiety ripples outward, tip of the tip of the tip of the tongue. I'm sorry, I can't. Words slip past, scatter like minnows in a dark lake. Awareness of the sense, but not the syllables, slippery things moving in reeds and shadows. Don't hunt them, don't grasp. Cast a net lightly, and the words swim back, finned silver, triumphant, as we row the lake again in our quiet boat, all eyes and hands.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, such a poem of presence, you know. We were speaking of that word, and I was thinking of, you know, that image of the stone tossed in the water and the ripples, kind of, you know, that kind of being with someone who has Alzheimer's or dementia or is in some form of deterioration requires so much patience as for the sufferer too, you know. So just that idea of entering a space of patience that really is outside of some of these things that we were talking about, the commercialism, the speed of culture, you know. And I think again, that's why a poem like this feels so important. And I appreciate the very beginning too, um, you know, those words we must never say, do you remember? Because you see so often, and I saw this when my mother was dying and her mind was starting to unravel, one of my aunts would keep like trying to force her, like, you know,
Mm.
remember this, don't you remember? This is how it, you know, and it just feels so violent and also just kind of useless. You know, what you're arguing for in this poem is more of a sitting back, a leaning back, and just allowing, even as it's kind of a painful patience to have.
Right. And by nature, I am not a patient person. Like it is not one of my top qualities. And I think I think it was at your aunt, that was me early on in this
Mm.
experience of her Alzheimer's where I would ask it and I learned the hard way that it would cause her distress and
Yeah.
then me distress watching and it became a whole loop and I realized I had to have compassion for myself because in asking that question I was seeking connection like you don't remember this like going back to those shared experiences shared history and although when I would see her saying I can't, you know, in some way, either silent or actually speaking it as the mother in the poem does, I had to sort of revision what it would mean to be with her in the absence of language or language like we used to share. And that's where like the ending of the boat of the being in a boat together and we're rowing it, but we're just looking at each other, maybe holding hands. And yeah, I think this poem, like it was one of those poems that it came very quickly and it was quite healing to write. Um,
Mm.
and yeah, and I can see that there are other people who are also you know, struggling with loved ones in various stages of loss of either, you know, memory or language. And it's so hard.
Mhm.
It's really so hard. And you know, my heart goes out to everyone. And I feel like it's important to acknowledge how hard it is and then also, you know, be so kind to ourselves if we are in that in some form of a caregiving relationship, so we can keep showing up to be with our loved ones.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so important, just that self-care, self-compassion piece, and you know, meaning that on the deepest level possible, just really being gentle with oneself. And looking around and saying, who is in a caregiving role and how can I help them, you know, or how can I show up for them? Because it is just such a hard thing, as so many folks out there know. Um, I was thinking too of the ending. I know a couple people have pointed to that as being another really wonderful ending. And I love that image of the two of you being in the same boat,
Mm.
just like that expression, we say we're in the same boat, we're in
Yeah.
this together. Um, and then also the all eyes and hands, because I know you and I have talked about this, but toward the end, that the touch being so important, and then just being able to look and just appreciate, like even looking into the eyes and knowing that it's different now. There may not be that spark of recognition, but we can still recognize, and so there's that piece is still there. So it just feels like such a complex poem to me, and it also, your poems are all very visual, but this one especially I feel like could be animated
Hmm.
and could
Oh,
like turn
I
out
see. Like
really
you
beautifully.
know,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, that would be so cool.
Yeah.
I can imagine that now too.
Yeah. Because it has this kind of calming quality, and I could just see it being, really useful for families who are dealing with stuff like
Mm.
this. I wish I could do that for you. I wish I had
I
those
know. Well, maybe we'll
skills.
just put it out to the universe. If there's
That's right.
anybody who's a animator who knows one, I would I would love that. And I think the idea of poetry as a form of self-compassion. Yeah, I'm someone who I'm just very hard on myself. And actually, I don't even know why it happened today. Maybe it was like the holiday and a lot of things, that to juggle. I felt like it was a sort of a morning of being extra hard. And there's something about the the quiet of poetry, the slowing down of poetry, the acknowledgement that we get. It's sort of when I even just reading this poem again, it brings me back into that space that I shared with my mother in the earlier stages of her illness, where the words would swim back, you know, and it's sort of replenishing, um,
Yeah.
and but like I said at the beginning, this book took a long time to come into the world. So, it's in three sections. Word finding is at the beginning, but by the end, my mom is quite close to, she's now um, at the end of Dark Beds is nonverbal and non-mobile. And it took a long time for that to happen. And so painful to witness, and yet also now I'm on the other side because she died in September, right before the vernal equinox. um I'm actually glad that I have these poems as um I don't know, reminders for me of the moments on on the journey on the lake together.
Yeah, I mean, you read my mind because I was going to ask you about that, just how, now that your mom has died, and you're both sort of on the other side of this period, how these poems kind of land for you. And
Right.
I feel the same way about poems for both of my parents that I wrote while they were ill, and then, in sort of the fresh period after that initial loss. It's so useful to have those moments, and those are the moments when I'm just like, thank you that I'm a writer, because
Right.
it's how you process. And Carolyn was saying, writing for healing, that it is what we do, um in our own ways.
Absolutely. And I've loved reading some of the poems you've shared about your mom. And I will say I still haven't written a poem yet about the actual, final stages.
Mhm.
I found myself when I was, with her, and it took like almost a month, um, writing a lot in my journal, just wanting to
Yeah.
bear witness,
Mhm.
and being sort of in a state of amazement because in this, I didn't really understand this, but there sort of was touching the mystery of existence
Mhm.
that happened like in the space of her dying, and I hadn't really expected that. And it was the only other thing in my life that I'd experienced was like around the time after my babies were born, and that sort of sacred like newness, and here's was at the other end. So I wrote, you know, but I haven't gone back and to try to like put it into a poem form, and that's okay. I'm trying. Actually,
Mhm.
one of my mom's favorite sayings was trust the process.
Yeah.
I think that was she was a um her name was Jude or Judith, and so she was like a 60s, got married barefoot in 1969, and you know,
Nice.
loved folk music. And so I think that was a 60s mantra, trust the process. So I'm kind of embodying my mom's
Mhm.
philosophy around like I'll know when it's the right time to do that. And so what I have now are actually, when I read these poems out loud and share them here with all of you, it's a way of, I mean, keeping her alive is just not really the right word, but
Yeah.
it's like honoring her and honoring my love for her and what she went through. Um, and
Mhm.
so I feel so lucky that and actually this book came out a few weeks after she died. I
Mm.
think it was like 2 or 3 weeks, and I had to do
Yeah.
the thing for book launch. You know, I was really in that sort of stunned, very exhausted grief space, but I put on a sparkly dress and I showed up, and um I'm still not really sure how I managed to do that, but I actually felt like she was there with me as
Mm.
I was reading. And I think I read that poem and I read a couple others. And I was really grateful.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, I have had a similar experience of, feeling that my mother is accompanying me some way, somehow. I don't know. I can't explain it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to really, but I
No.
also appreciate that you're kind of talking about doing some of the kind of raw writing that happens right after grief, and I mean like months after, year or 2 years after, it's all very raw because I think I think we have to honor the process or trust the process of writing and poetry because I was trying to write poems right after my mom died, just because it's what I do, it's sort of how I process the world. But it was so brand new and the world was so changed and I was so changed that there was no way. And so I got frustrated, like, why are these so bad? Why are they not working? And it came to my realizing that, and just what you said, I just need to write in my journal. If it
Mhm.
comes out as a poem, that's fine, but like it's not going to be anything for a
Yeah.
while. And anything that has become something that I've been called to share has really just come in the side door or really just completely surprised me and usually led to, a fit of weeping and just, feeling totally tender and open-hearted. But I think it's again kind of creating that room for surprise in the writing process, just allowing ourselves to be surprised and and knowing that maybe the poems, the pieces, the fragments will call to us when it's the right time.
When absolutely, I love that. And I'm really I'm grateful for the kind words in the chat about someone Aria said keeping her close. And
Mm.
that is what it feels like to either share the poems or even write about her in the privacy of the journal.
Mm.
And I think like since I was very young, that's kind of how I make sense of the world. Either writing, even as a elementary schooler, like I loved like writing in these composition books.
Mhm.
It wasn't anything that anyone had to force me to do. And then certainly when I got into like junior high and high school, it became really important to have that outlet. And like here I am, I'm 50 years old and my journal is important.
Mm. It's still calling to you.
Mm,
Well, I want to kind of focus on that phrase you said, the privacy of the journal, because
mm,
I just feel like that's really important in this day and age. And I think we all fall prey to this of, writing something, creating something that we're proud of or that we feel like might touch other people or help them, and then wanting to share it sort of immediately, kind of put it into the world, get it published or however. And it just feels really important to honor, just the privacy of the journal. And I'm thinking of the title of your book, Dark Beds,
yeah.
this idea of planting a seed, which was the seed of this book. Like you said, it took a very long time. I mean, it felt very, very long to you, I'm sure. But it took a long time to sort of come to fruition. And there has to be a lot of trust, that same patience that we were talking about before. Um, so I feel like part of this conversation is helping me to honor that need for
Mm.
privacy, especially when we're dealing with maybe tender subject matter, you know.
Right. And I do think more than ever there is I mean, I feel the urge to share too. And sometimes that's just a sort of a natural welling up, and that having even, sometimes say if a poem has even one gentle reader, that can be, such a affirming, feedback loop. So I do trust that too. And that I'm also, just not rushing it, and trying to trust that it's going to take the time it needs to take. And yeah, I mean, it's actually making me think of the poem Medicine,
Mm,
because that was actually the last poem that I wrote for this book, and it came really close to the end. So for thinking about, dark beds. There are a lot of different beds. I'm a gardener, so I was writing about garden beds. In fact, the title poem is really about the beds in springtime, just starting to, lily of the valley starting to come up,
mm,
in May here in Vermont. And then there's definitely the marriage bed, and then there's also, the bed of the page. And
mm,
then in the poem Medicine, it's also the sick bed. And that was I think the first poem that I've really written, because I have a chronic pain condition, which can, be in remission for periods of time, but when I deal with flare-ups, it can be utterly debilitating.
mm,
And it's not something that I talk about that much, and it hasn't been, something I've led with. I don't have like a whole book about it, but that poem was really about kindness to myself. Like it was
mm,
just about being in a space of self-compassion. And my mom actually kind of comes into it as well, because I was naming all the different forms of healing that I could think of. And one of them was a heating pad that my mom had given me a long time ago.
mm.
Um, so yeah, should I go ahead and read that
Yeah,
one?
let's hear it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Uh-oh, where is it? I put it in. Oh, it's earlier in the book than I remembered. Okay. Medicine. Anything can be medicine. A jar of spring water, a dropper of oil, wind chimes at dusk by a door no one enters. The smallest cat venturing onto your lap, circling to make her day bed. There is medicine in her purr, her paws kneading your sweater. Medicine in the glow of the creased old heating pad, borrowed long ago from your mother. See, it still works. Lay it over your belly. TV can be medicine if you're too sore to sleep. Even the childproof vial of hard white pills, concocted in a factory on another continent, rattling like teeth in the vitamin drawer, is necessary medicine for despair. Stop gritting your jaw, calculating your failures. Anything can be medicine. Open the cap, tip the pearls into your palm. Forgive yourself everything. Swallow.
Mm. Feels almost like an anthem when you read it out loud, that has that power that picks up, especially toward the end. And I was just thinking, I mean, I already know this, but your poems are really meant to be read out loud,
Hmm.
that you're paying so much attention to the sound that they come alive in a different way, which, of course, should be true for poetry, but I just feels especially true right now. Um, yeah, we're gonna write from this, the community and I, in the second half, this poem, because I really love this idea of all these different kinds of medicines that are
Mhm.
available to us. So I'm curious, what made you write this? It feels like there's this sense of empowerment, or like, letting go of shame or failure. So besides what you mentioned before, kind of what was the emotional thing that this poem was really steeping in for you?
Oh, well, I'm reading people have some very insightful observations, like allowing self-compassion, allowing in um, the need to take medicine, whatever that medicine is. If is it rest? Is it needing to lay on the couch with a heating pad over, in this case, my abdomen, or wherever a place of pain is in the body, but maybe also the heart. Um, I think also, since you asked like on a very specific level, I think it was a sense of shame, guilt, and almost justification around like taking Western medicine,
Mm,
especially in my very natural, holistic part of Vermont. And I'm also a yoga teacher and surrounded by a lot of people who would think that swallowing a pill, either for depression, which is something that I have struggled with my whole life, or for physical pain, is a sign of weakness.
mm,
And so I think to myself, I was sort of creating this anthem that if I need to take this medicine, it's okay.
yeah.
It's okay. And almost receive, it's also like, it's how you receive it,
Mm,
energetically. Um, that is part of like the sort of alchemy of healing. Um, which is why I think something like, a sort of mystery body work like Reiki, where someone doesn't even necessarily put their hands on you, but healing is transmitted. Like that same theory could be true for a pharmaceutical. Like that's kind of where the poem came from, because I'm definitely someone who worked really, really hard not to take the pain medicine, you
mhm,
know, and it was only when I softened and admitted that I needed help, that I couldn't do it all by myself, that I needed to receive. Then I think that was actually where some of the healing could happen.
mm,
Um, and forgiving myself, that there's a line about calculating my failures. I
yeah.
think calculating your failures, which is definitely something that my mind likes to do on a bad day. And if you're someone who struggles with like a cyclical illness, one of sort of a mystery autoimmune, or a syndrome that where it involves pain, there can be these questions of why. What have I done? What did I do that
Yeah.
this is back? And so the surrender into this is happening. I fully accept it. I need to rest. This is my body's wisdom. And then these are the things that I can receive as a source of healing.
Mm. Yeah, well, I mean, that's a great answer. And I had a feeling that you were in that same boat as I am sometimes, like really resisting the idea of taking a pill, or, taking what can feel like the easy way out. But I think it has to do so much with what you're saying, the energy with which
Ah,
you receive it. I think that idea of receiving it as a gift, or as, you know, a pearl, the way it's transformed into that at the end of the poem just feels so essential to me, that we can transform even something that some people and we ourselves might have called poison, like, oh, I don't want to take that, you know, that's just Western medicine, that's poison. Transform that into a pearl, into medicine that's actually going to help us, because the truth is there are times when we have to receive that. And I've heard people talk about this with chemotherapy too, which is so brutal for the
Mm.
body, but having to really just change that relationship to these chemicals that are flowing into the body and just giving it a different frame. And it can change a lot. It may not change, you know, the terrible side effects, but it can change things, I think, for us.
Oh, absolutely. And I also have friends who've talked about that. It's not something that I've experienced, but I think all of us know people or have been through it ourselves in some way, been close to it. Um, and I think our culture like really prizes, you know, strongness and, you know, strength and vigor and you know, being, and I've definitely been somebody, I mean, I was a competitive athlete. So I was very invested in having a strong body and kind of being in control. And so getting a diagnosis of a quite a mysterious you know, disease, which doesn't necessarily have an endpoint. It's something that you have to manage. I mean, it changed me profoundly. And
Mm.
I think it's like a lifelong journey with self-compassion. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah.
I love that you use the word strongness first,
I know it's
because
strength.
because it's strength, but like true strength is different from this, like, you know, strongness
Mm,
ideal that our culture has of just like, I'm going to be strong enough that I don't need this, I don't need help from anyone or anything. And it's like, it's so not real strength. I think the real strength is what you're talking about with being able to receive it, being able to reframe it, and really, I think that that helps us as writers, you know, because we can be more in a place of receptivity rather than, you know, action and like, I have to control this, I have to guide this. And I feel like receptivity, I don't know, I've written a lot more and better, I think, when I've been
mm.
receptive instead of trying to just push forward.
Absolutely, like that. I love the word receptivity. I sometimes say that in yoga, like we can try to muscle it, like muscle our way
Mhm.
into, for example, for anyone's a yoga practitioner, like pigeon pose, which can be like a very challenging pose for your hip, and you can try to force your body there, or you can move slowly and into a receptive space. And that is actually how I aspire to engage with my writing process as well, and trusting that there's different seasons, and that the page is always there, the poetry is always there, but there's not this pressure to produce in a
Mhm.
way that I sometimes, you know, worry that that's the end goal. Um, and if I'm engaged in receptivity, then I that it just takes up that sort of sense of muscling or forcing or you know, being on a clock on some level. It takes that away.
Yeah. Well, I love that metaphor of the yoga pose because it just, you know, I think we can try to force things with writing and poetry sometimes too, whether it's publishing it sooner or like, why is this not working? We kind of exhaust ourselves and then beat ourselves up because we can't quite get there. But I love that idea of like knowing that there's this kind of difficult pose we're trying to reach and just slowly like moving toward it. We may not get there yet, but you just keep moving toward it until you're able to kind of settle into it. So I think it feels like we didn't plan this, of course, but
No.
part of the theme of the whole conversation has been that idea of taking time, letting things happen on their own, and planting those seeds and working toward it, but not in a way that's going to go against self-compassion, or that's gonna, I love that word muscling too, that's gonna muscle us into this pose that's gonna feel harmful.
Right. I like that. Like it's very visceral to think about muscle as a verb.
Mm.
Both what we could do to our bodies, and then, when you think about like muscling a poem on the page, it just feels kind of absurd.
It's totally.
Um, I'm really I'm living what I'm reading about. Ellen's mentoring about mentioned that like taking an antidepressant as a form of self-love, and
Mm.
um, I believe that too, and it's something that I've had to accept about myself, even in the face of people who will question that or have judgment about it. And so it's like self-love and also self-awareness, self-understanding.
Mhm.
It's like only we have know like what it feels like to have been in a place of darkness, to have wrestled with the noonday demon, which is an amazing book that I read too a long time ago. And so being able to trust ourselves, if something helps, that we can accept it. Um, so yeah. And how we don't question, let's say, if someone needed medicine for their heart or for to prevent seizures, but
Mhm.
we would when it comes to mental health. So I'm really about destigmatizing that, and it's something I have written about in prose, like even in like our local newspaper here in my community, sort of like coming out of I think I called it coming out of the depression closet and saying, look, this is something that I've lived with, and this is one of the ways that that I find healing, and hoping that that might give somebody else a sense of permission, like, oh, maybe I should look into, trying this. And I'm not trying to proselytize, because it's not for everybody. There are a lot of different ways to treat, mental health and depression. But I do think it's important to speak about it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Anything that's living sort of in the darkness, that's staying hidden in culture, I think it's such a service to bring it out into the light. And you have done that for us. I mean, with grief and with um, depression. And another poem of yours that I shared with the group is The Ever Given.
Oh yeah.
That one that is also about depression. Because again, it's like it's kind of giving an image to this thing that can seem so amorphous and so difficult to talk about. Um, well, I could keep talking to you forever, but I will let you go.
And I want all of you to be able to dive into your own writing process wherever it takes you. So what a joy to be part of this community. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here, for sharing so much of your heart with us on Valentine's Day.
Oh,
The best kind of heart.
the best kind of heart. Thank you, everybody. And yeah, sending out love and blessings on this day, and take care of yourselves.
Right. Well, thank you, Diana. We'll be
Thank
in
you,
touch
James.
again soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye now. All right, everyone. Wow, what a wonderful session with Diana. So, just before we go, while we're all here, I wanted to quickly share about a poetry chapbook contest that's coming up. It's put on by the Poetry Box, which is run by one of our members, Sean Avingo Sanders, and it's being judged by one of our members, Donna Hilbert. So I have the link up there, but we'll also include the link in the aftercare email if any of you want to kind of explore that a little bit. So what we'll do is take 5, grab some more water, some tea, stretch your legs, and we'll come back and do some writing together based on Diana's poem. We'll see where that takes us. All right, thank you, everyone.
the heartwood cutter? Would you lay me low beneath your feet? Listen to my sad mutter. Hear my heartwood beat. Would you throw me on a log pile cutter? Would you toss me to the steel saw blade? Listen to my leaves flutter. Hear my heartwood break. Would you lean your back against me, cutter? Would you rest your axe a while and sleep? Listen to the song I utter. Hear my heartwood weep. Hear my heartwood. Heartwood. Hear my heartwood. I drink the rain, I eat the sun, I give the breath that fills your lungs. I hear the roaring engines thrum, but I cannot run. Would you hew me to the heartwood cutter? Would you lay me low beneath your feet? Listen to my sad mutter. Hear my heartwood beat. Hear my heartwood. Heartwood. Hear my heartwood. May I be empty and open to receive the light. May I be empty and open to receive. May I be full and open to receive the light. May I be full and open to receive. May I be empty and open to receive the light. May I be empty and open to receive. May I be full and open to receive the light. May I be full and open to receive. May I be empty and open to receive the light. May I be empty and open to receive. May I be full and open to receive the light. May I be full and open to receive. May I be empty and open to receive the light. May I be empty and open to receive. May I be full and open to receive the light. May I be full and open to receive.
Well, as usual, Michelle picks the perfect music. As Lisa said, that was the perfect song for the conversation that we just had. And so let's just take a moment to center ourselves a little bit. Let's do some breathing together. Feet flat on the floor. Some attention to the breath, the heartbeat that we discussed before. And just feeling the medicine of the space, this time together, this creative space. And just watch the breath for another moment or two. Notice any places where you might be tense. Try to release those, just unclenching the body. Let's slowly come back together now. We'll turn to our packet, and first poem that I really want to work with is Medicine. And so I'll go ahead and read that again and then offer up the invitation for all of us to work with. So this is, again, Medicine by Diana Whitney. Anything can be medicine. A jar of spring water, a dropper of oil, wind chimes at dusk by a door. No one enters. The smallest cat venturing onto your lap, circling to make her daybed. There is medicine in her purr, her paws kneading your sweater. Medicine in the glow of the creased old heating pad borrowed long ago from your mother. See, it still works. Lay it over your belly. TV can be medicine if you're too sore to sleep. Even the child-proof vial of hard white pills concocted in a factory on another continent, rattling like teeth in the vitamin drawer, is necessary medicine for despair. Stop gritting your jaw, calculating your failures. Anything can be medicine. Open the cap, tip the pearls into your palm. Forgive yourself everything. Swallow. So the invitation for this one is to just kind of create your own list poem, as Diana does here. And you can start with her line, anything can be medicine. See where the repetition of that sentence leads you. And then you might just also explore what feels like medicine to you right now. So what's nourishing, what's useful, even if it is very far away from our usual ideas of what a medicine can be. So we'll write from that for about 15 minutes. So come back at about 24 after the hour. And then I'll invite folks to use the raise hand function and we'll see who wants to share. So we'll work with the medicine poem and then see where that takes us. All right, everyone, happy writing. Right, everyone. So we'll just take another minute or so to finish up whatever we're writing and come back together and share. All right, everyone. So we'll just come together again now and back out of our writing process. So if you'd like to volunteer to share what you wrote in a very low pressure, no judgment atmosphere, you can click on the raise hand feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen there, and we'll just get to as many people as we can. So first up, we have Joanne. Would like to share? And hopefully this yielded something for you all. This was a really rich writing one for me. There was something about that language in the poem that really, that led to a couple of poems, actually. I don't know if they're any good, but I'm encouraged by what Diana was saying to just let them be. Hi, Joanne.
Hello,
Like to share with us?
I would. I approached this a little differently and it needs something at the end, so I have to play with it a little more afterwards. But
Gotcha.
there's healing in pine scented air, sitting on a bench in the mountains on a mild day in June. Breathe deep. Can you feel it? A balm for your soul as you rest in the quiet. Healing too in working with your hands, the click of needles, soft music as you knit a shawl for a friend. Feeling the soft wool caress your fingers, the warm weight of it an embrace. And you hope your friend feels it too each time she wraps it around her shoulders. There is healing in putting thoughts into words, unclenching your heart in a safe place, the page. Whether anyone else sees it or not, what you've held inside has now been released somehow, has somehow made you free.
Mm, beautiful ending. I don't know if you need anything else there.
Oh,
Keep
okay.
playing with it. See what you need. I don't know. It felt like a sense of completion to me, and
Okay.
I love that idea of whatever's been held in kind of being released and feeling free now. And like Ray is saying, very soothing to listen to. And
Well,
I really I loved that first image, but the second image of the needles clicking really really brought me into the poem. I think because it was so physical, but in your words, I could also hear the music of the needles in the same way that I could hear the heartbeat in Diana's poem. So just wonderful job with that.
thank
And
you.
this is definitely one to keep working with until you're
All right.
satisfied.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Joanne. All right, next up is Raimon. Yeah, the needles clicking, the soft wool kind of falling through the hands. I guess I'm really into the physical in poetry, and I just think it helps so much.
I'm so grateful to be here today. Hi, everyone. Hi, James.
Hi there.
By serendipity, my husband and I both got COVID. So,
Oh,
a work job I would have normally be doing on some of these Wednesdays, which makes me miss this live, has left me able to be here live. So, and
good.
healing. So, fortunate.
Yes,
Yeah.
good.
Taking the cure, taking the medicine, if you will. Yeah, this was kind of an interesting one for me when Diana was going through her poems, especially medicine. I've just scribbled down like a bunch of titles that I would love to write a poem about. And some of them were interesting, but I picked one of them, and I'm calling this "Your Results May Vary." So let's see what, it's maybe two poems in here, but I'm not sure. So I'll just go for it. Healing can be challenging. Care of our corporeal selves, fraught with Madison Avenue's admonitions. Your results may vary. Ask your doctor if X is right for you. Take Y only as directed. Or my very favorite, a long list of possible outcomes, briefly on the TV screen or in barely decipherable print in a remote location on the packaging, or perhaps breathlessly voiced in soothing tones while the persons on screen blow bubbles or cavort gleefully through a verdant field. It says, for some taking X, blah, 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 and death have occurred. I've taken many cures, had this organ removed, that one radiated, years on the challenging to say proton pump inhibitor, a period on Prozac as I opened the Pandora's box of my troubled past and parentage. But what about now? What soothes, heals, opens, cures in this singular moment? Well, I write this, and as I do, I hold in my right hand a heart fist-sized Sedona stone, the color of delicious cream of tomato soup. Both are simple remedies to what ails, are they not? That's it.
Also a nice ending. I really enjoyed that. The color of the soup was unexpected, but it's sort of, brought that back in with the healing. And then from what I understand about Sedona is also,
My husband and I went to Sedona this past November for a wedding. We went to Arizona for a wedding and just toured all over the place, including
nice.
the wonderful healing place that Sedona is. So
I love that. Yeah, well, I love that your poem also turned into, it kind of touched on all of these different things, and you were playing on those terrible ceaseless commercials that we're all subjected to now for the medications. But I love that it circled back to this question, what about now? What helps, what heals now?
yeah,
And that you brought it back to the immediate of what was happening, and back to that physical
right.
of holding the stone. I felt like that was really powerful.
Yeah. Well, if I've learned anything from the blessing of coming into contact with you in these workshops and in your writing and in your anthologies, is that there's this attention to the moment or the thing right in front of you, or the smell or the sight or the feeling, right, that's right there. And that's always a good lesson every day. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for saying that, and thank you for sharing your lovely poem.
You bet. It's my pleasure. Thanks.
All right. Well, take care, Ramon. I hope you heal
Will do.
well.
Yes. Thank you.
And next up is Danielle. Yes, as Rachel points out, the stone and the poem are both antidotes for all those horrible side effects that we're told about now. I thought that was a really strong part of the poem, because those commercials always bewilder me somehow with all the list of side effects and all the different kinds of medications out there. Hi, Danielle.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome. Good. How are you doing?
I'm fine, not used to sharing. I kind of slapped this down quickly because I'm a little triggered by the mental health part. So hold on here. All righty. Here I go. Praise the anticonvulsants and insulin that kept my cousin Greg upright until he died. The Whipple procedure inviting Danny to leave behind his pancreatic cancer and go hunting again. The Effexor that saved my friend's marriage and my student's life. Notice the missing names from mental health. A privacy still necessary in this world of Western medicine and values. After all, it's the West, unrestrained, gritty cowboy territory. As for the drugs that fucked my daughter and her circle of recovering addict friends, that's another chapter. Choose your meds wisely. Know your circle and its scribble of intentions, both good and bad. Hop over the dirty lines. Anything can be medicine. 6-year-old grandson Charlie yelling, "Baba, check this out," as he hangs from the top of the rope spiderweb at DeGarmo Park. My husband's quiet smile when I worry about things out of my reach. My daughter, the addict, with a heart bigger than Texas and 5 years clean.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. I love how you all will often say like, oh, I just put this down really quickly, and it just feels like something that's been so considered and so, finely wrought over time. I think it's partly because some of these things just want to be shared and want to be spoken out loud.
I guess
And
so.
I felt that with this, Danielle. So
Thank you. I
yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah, I know you don't usually like to share, but it was really beautiful. And I think many other people, well, Mary Beth was saying, I feel the strength in that poem, especially at the end, that there is this strength and there's a turn that happens in the poem. It doesn't always happen and it doesn't always have to happen,
Mhm.
but I can appreciate that, you're honoring the real, the truthful, and then you're allowing that turn to happen when it feels most natural. You're not trying to force it to go into a positive direction. You're just saying, well, these other things can be medicine too. Like I've praised the actual, pharmaceuticals and medicines, and these other things can be medicine too.
Mhm.
And yeah, so thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you very much. Thank you
Appreciate
all.
that.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. And next up is Jeannie. Yeah, you all keep saying this, but I think the poems themselves today are medicine for all of us. And anytime we tell the truth in a poem as we feel and see it, then we're offering medicine to ourselves and to other people. Hi, Jeannie.
Hi there. Hi,
Good to see you.
everyone. Oh man, I just love these prompts. They get me writing when I don't feel like writing. So
I can relate.
so I've had a hard time since my brother died. I think I've mentioned before, and so it's really but it's really fun to do these prompts. So it gets me back into it. So I really appreciate it. Okay, anything can be medicine. The maple leaf floating to the forest floor. The frozen waterfall in Acadia last week, with peepholes to the flowing water behind the icicles, just as our beating hearts warm us from the depths of dark thoughts. The chickadee sings to me a healing balm of musical notes in its large repertoire, selecting the tune that warms me on this deep winter's day. The man ahead of me in the drive-through paid for my coffee, so I paid for the car behind me. The barista so excited as I was the 11th person to do this, and it's not even a holiday. Uplifting elixirs are all around us every day. Partake. Take part when you can. Kindness and the sharing of talents heal us day by living day.
I really like that last line, day by living day. That's a new take on that, the day by day phrase. So really enjoy that. And just the way that this generous poem is just looking around and trying to find all of those elixirs. So Clayton had just written medicine is all around. And you just literally said that a few seconds later in your poem. So I love that. I love the invitation to partake. So receive, like Diana and I were talking about,
Mm,
and then also take part. So we do have to make some effort. We do have to take some action.
mhm,
You have to be listening to the chickadee. You have to be looking through those wonderful two peepholes to see the water still flowing through the ice in the waterfall. Great
mhm.
image there, by the way. So I think this whole poem is a really open invitation And I'm glad it came through. I know you have struggled with writing since your brother's death, and I think Diana's kind of encouragement to just take our time and
Yeah.
let it happen as slowly as it needs to, while
Yeah.
frustrating,
Mhm.
is very welcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Jeannie. Next up is Mary Ray, or Ray as she's known. Yeah, I feel like I walk away from these sessions with so many images. So the peepholes and the frozen waterfall. What an image. Being able to see that water falling down from behind there. It's just amazing to me. Hi, Ray. Looks like you're still
Hi.
muted. There you are.
Hey, James. Um, just a beginning of this one. How did I start? Anything can be medicine. The open window, the cool, sweet smell of breeze on this early February morning, the inhale and the longer exhale, the goldfinch, the pine warbler, the chipping sparrow sharing the feeder, the pleasure of finally knowing their differences, their names, the line of Grand Primo paper whites from a deceased neighbor, opening again like chandeliers, lighting the remembered path between us, and the special warmth of coffee delivered by my beloved best friend, and how he leaves me to my quiet revelry. That's it.
Beautiful. Another beautiful, generous poem. I love that.
Thanks. I think it was on the same page as Jeannie, because both
Mhm.
talked about birds and outside.
Yeah. I bet you're not the only ones. I was just thinking about how busy our feeder is today and the sunshine and with a little snow on the ground. So yeah. Yeah, again, just that poem that's willing to look around, take it all in, include it all, and just allow it to be that medicine. Just allow ourselves to receive it. So, oh, appreciate you sharing that, Ray. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Take care. And next up is Lynn McClure. Yeah, Aria is pointing to the remembered path between us. I loved that image too, with the neighbor that had passed and the path being still kind of lit up between the two houses. At least that's how I was receiving that. I always love a list poem. So if you're stuck, if you can find the right prompt to unlock it, I think a list poem, just kind of taking in the sensory details around you, is a really good way to get unstuck. It's a really good way if you facilitate workshops to also help other people kind of get unstuck as well. Really useful. Looks like Lynn may not be on anymore, so we'll go to the next person, which is Stella. Oh, there's Lynn. Oh. Hi, Lynn. It looks like you're still muted there.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I haven't been able to be here in so long. I love being here today.
I'm glad you're here.
Yeah. And I hope I can read this. It's really a ragged scribble. Interventions. There is a gesture. I flap my hand over my head as though I could bat the word I have lost, as though I can grasp it out of the air, catch and stuff it into the conversation before anyone notices. Frisson of fear. The next try is to think around it. You know that place where the crepe myrtles are on the square? I'm batting my hand here. that woman that looks like Christine Lagarde, remember that day when we had that dish that uses saffron, we had in Memphis. How odd to find saffron in Memphis. The last trick, rewrite the whole sentence so that it says, well, it doesn't matter anyway. Let's have a cup of tea.
Oh, that's one solution to not being able to remember something, right? We'll just leave it
Well,
behind. Have a cup of tea.
word finding is something that is a just is an everyday thing. So
Mhm. Yeah, well, I love the playful kind of, feel of that poem and how it just kind of brought the moment alive, that you were kind of enacting the moment too as you were reading it. So there was a lot of energy in the poem that was more playful and light. So I love that the poem is holding that a little more lightly.
well, if you can't take it lightly, you're in big trouble at my age.
I would agree. I would agree. And you're a great example to all of us. Thank you,
Sir.
Lynn.
Good to see you.
You too. Take care. So last up, we'll have Peg Idira. I think that'll be our last person for now, because I just want to get to one more little writing practice if we can. Hi, Peg.
Hi. It's so good to be here. I just love the surprises that keep floating up all the time. And so what I wrote was a surprise.
Mm.
It has a title. The title's Hymnal. Open the thin-paged book. Dust rises like a tiny genie, whirling up, released at last. The smell of faded roses and your elderly aunt's talcum powder floats free. You're on number 42. You remember it's for the beauty of the earth, but today it's the purring cat and whistling kettle. You turn again, number 94. Breathe on me, breath of God. Fill me with life anew. Has become the whisper of the silver poplar leaves outside your window, the rocking of the bell buoy in the bay, your husband whistling, Here Comes the Bride. Number 133, a poem by Mary Oliver you didn't know had been set to music. Not a contest, but a doorway into thanks. Number 212, suddenly, Allison Russell sings, You're Not Alone. You shut the book. You open the book. The smell of blueberry pie, the tang of rosemary beside the mint, like old friends holding hands. Then, number 353, the waves sing Hallelujah. You know these hymns so well.
Wow. As Stella says, delightful. That was just delightful to listen to. And I love that, at least the way I was listening to it. It feels like you're creating your own hymns, right? Just, with actual things and everyday objects and everyday images. Just really beautiful. How did you do that?
Well, I'll tell you that I've recently been thinking that there are favorite poems that I have written by all the wonderful poets out in the world, and I should make a poetry hymnal for myself so that I could just, so the idea of a hymnal has been in my head for a while, and this was just, here it is, one of the surprises, like I said.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, now you've gotten me thinking of what a hymnal is, what it does. what a hymn does, which is sort of, in a way, give instruction, often give comfort, give hope during really dark times. Like it's an effort to lift the listener or the singer out of a certain state of being and into a higher state. And it seems to me like what you're talking about in so many of these parts that you were mentioning is turning back to the world and the things that bring you delight and joy, comfort, um, and that really strike you. I mean, you know, in a religious context, we could talk about it differently, but it's just on a very basic level. That's what it seems to be doing, and I guess that's what the best poetry does too. So, I love the idea of a poetry hymnal. Please create it, and then if you want to, you can share it with us as well.
Thank you so
Sounds
much.
good.
It was just, yeah, the surprises. This is,
Yeah, well, it's so lovely to be surprised. And I love that you're kind of, you know, focusing on that aspect of it because we did bring that up with Diana Whitney, just allowing ourselves to be surprised
yeah,
and kind of holding on to that don't know mind as we go into a writing prompt or even just reading or listening to a brand new poem and just saying, you know, I don't know what this is going to bring up for me.
yeah,
Let me just stay open. And it feels like you created something that's just completely um like structured and you know just you have a lot of material there for such a short period of time. So just really I'm surprised by that in a very
thanks.
pleasant way.
Thanks a lot. I
Yeah,
haven't read all the comments, but I've seen a couple. Thank you. Everyone's so generous.
you're getting lots of love as we all have been. But yeah, just really, really lovely. So
Thank you.
thanks, Peg.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And maybe I'm not sure if we're going to have time for another writing prompt. I always tend to go over because I want to hear what you guys are having to say. So maybe we could hear from Stella, just our last person, and then I'll share a poem of my own and give you a prompt a prompt to take with you into the rest of this Valentine's Day. And sorry to the few folks that we weren't able to get to. But we will try to remember you for next time and put you at the top of the list. Yeah, I think we'll all be thinking of that idea of the poetry hymnal, as Mary Beth is saying. I think that's why I ended up editing my own anthologies. It's because I just wanted to create poetry hymnals. I never thought of it that way, but I think it's a beautiful way to honor those poems that give us the most. Okay, so Stella's not here. Let's go with Mary Beth as our last person. And sorry about this. I know it can be awkward to wait through. It's always worth it to me to hear what you guys have come up with and what you shared. But I know it sometimes accidentally leave the webinar or something happens. Hi, Mary Beth.
Hi, you guys. Well, this is two stanzas. You can figure out where one starts. They're like little vignettes, and I felt like I could go on and on. The images are really clear, but I feel like I could go back and pretty them up, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Here we go. And I'm really answering the question, what is medicine for me? Our tree in the backyard. I put my arms on you and kiss your bark. Gray, rough, creviced, curling. My lips look for a smooth spot, and I rest my face against your trunk. Evie is medicine. Zen dog, happy soft eyes. husky head tilted up to the sky, nose leaning into the air, eyes closed. I know you are sniffing the day, or mouth open, smiling, eyes alert. What is next? I lean into your energy gladly. I love the way you watch us in the kitchen, eyes going back and forth. Each time our hands or body move the food, you actually think you are getting some. Or when someone comes to work on the house and you muscle in right up front, a ringside seat, again the advisor, as if they will turn to you and ask your thoughts. Can you hand me that wrench? I love the way wherever you go, there you are, totally present in the now, the best medicine.
Yeah. I love that idea of the wherever you go, there you are.
I think that's the name of a book, James.
It is. John Kabat-Zinn, I think, is the name of it. But it works in the poem because, you know, I have talked with other people, and other people have spoken about how dogs are just our Zen teachers. And I love that, you know, leaning into the energy, and I can see the eyes moving back and forth. You know, you really made this dog come alive for us in these
I'll post a picture of him. He's incredible.
Please do.
Now I do want to say that I had ended it. I love the way wherever you go, there you are, totally present in the now. And then I decided to add the best medicine. And I don't know if that's kind of too much. I don't know what you think or anybody
I think
thinks.
the best medicine could be a title. It sort of feels like a title to me.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but just keep playing with it, you
Yeah.
know, and see what comes to you.
Thank
But
you.
I like it both ways.
Thanks for letting me share.
Absolutely, Mary Beth. Good to see you.
Good to see you guys.
All right, Stella is back. She said Zoom went into a spiral, so we'll have Stella share, and then I'll read my poem and send you off into your Valentine's Day. I also think that the smaller stanza, Mary Beth, about the tree doesn't really need prettying up. I didn't feel that it needed any prettying up. I thought it was really beautiful. Hi, Stella. Glad to have you back.
Hi. Yeah, was crazy. All right. I gently tumble into a field of long yellow grasses. For this moment, I am young and spry, limbs that give in to the soft earth, the cradle formed by fronds, rich with earth's aromas, not hindered by fears of itching and bruises, able to appreciate the world of insects dancing in my earthy bed. I slide a canoe into water's edge. Mud coats my toes. I splash each foot in a final push as I settle on the seat. I lift my paddle, knob in palm, right, then left, right, then left. Rhythmic pull. Lake wind carries me along. I am stiff. My 72-year-old fingers ache. I struggle to cut dense vegetables. I set aside big jars with big lids for someone else to open. Cooking, painting, gardening, activities that used to ground and sustain me, give me pause. I cautiously rub ointments on the joints that ache. Everywhere bone joins bone. There is a pill I cannot take without another one to dull its sting. I look in a mirror. I see the old woman who stalks me in my house. She smiles at me, winks, lifts a blade of grass stuck in her hair.
Wow. What energy. Are you sure you just wrote that?
I've had that one for years.
Feels like it. I really love that final image of the blade of grass in the hair. I always love, Stella, how your poems kind of return to the earth, and they do ground us. But I really appreciate that in this one, you're talking about how these things that once grounded you are now giving you pause. I think that that's a really key phrase for this poem, like giving me pause, because it is slowing you down. It is literally giving you a pause, right? And I loved the rhyme of ointment, joints, and bone, you know, all of that kind of mixed together. in this idea that we're talking about, the medicine that helps us, that hinders us, the best medicine, which I think is another good prompt. So just so much in this poem as usual.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for sharing it. Really
Sure.
appreciate it.
I'm glad I could get here.
I'm glad you came back too.
Thanks.
It all works out. So thanks, Stella, and thanks to all of you who shared. Feel free to post these in the private Facebook group. It doesn't mean that you won't be able to publish them again in the future. And before we go, I'll just share my poem that feels appropriate for today, which is Self-Love. And really, I think this takes off from Thich Nhat Hanh, Vietnamese Buddhist monk's idea of, just treating yourself as an honored guest in your own home, treating yourself as you would a guest, a family member, a friend, a child. So that's kind of where this poem took off. And this is Self-Love. Treat yourself as an honored guest in your own home. Sweep the floors, whisking loose hairs and crumbs into the dustpan, clearing cobwebs as if you are about to arrive here for the first time. Stoke the fire in the wood stove, stacking logs of maple and birch whose bark curls into flames that will warm the whole house as you step inside your body, learning to love its shape like never before. Offer yourself the wedge of brie you've been keeping in the back of the fridge. Pop open whatever bottle you've been saving for the moment you finally become your own dream date, your own special occasion. Now sit at the table set for one and feast on a simple meal of bread and cheese, relishing each taste of this new life, which has always been waiting inside you. So when I read this, I usually say apologies to any vegans out there for mentioning brie cheese, but it is one of my favorites. And so the prompt here is really simple, one that you might carry with you, you might write about, just try to live. Basically, how might you treat yourself as an honored guest in your own home? How might you express self-love in more nourishing and indulgent ways? And you might try to write a set of instructions for yourself that might help you do this. This could be a great Valentine's Day prompt, or just something that you could turn to when you kind of need a little boost and a little self-compassion, like we were also talking about earlier. So I will leave you all now. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks to Diana Whitney, to all the folks who shared your poems, who wrote together and shared your energy with us. Thank you to Michelle for making everything work, choosing the perfect music as always. And thanks again for being here. So take good care, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll look forward to next month will be Katie Luxem, and you'll get a little more information about that in the weeks to come. So take care, everyone. See you soon. Sending much love on this Valentine's Day.